Hi, I'm Jess.
Hi, I'm Kristen.
And welcome to ReDIScover, a space where we celebrate the childlike qualities that make up the essence of who we are while engaging with the world around us, both authentically and imaginatively.
Nothing is off the table here, and we talk a little bit...
or a lot.
About, well, everything.
Around here, we're always rediscovering, sharing empowering stories, and connecting our hearts and minds with every facet of life.
While we, of course, talk about the real stuff,
we invite you to be a part of the conversation as we broaden our perspectives, release limitations,
and grow to create our most joyful and fulfilling lives together.
So come along with us as we rediscover all the best parts of you
and bring a little bit of magic into your day.
Hi everyone, I'm Jess.
Hi, I'm Kristen.
And welcome to this week's episode of ReDIScover. Kristen, I think I'm going to let you introduce this episode because you're very passionate about this topic.
For those of you who've been around ReDIScover for a while, you know that every month is a brand new theme, and every theme has a collection of episodes surrounding one central topic. And this month, we really want to dive into some kind of avenues of feminism that we feel we can speak to with a lot of authenticity. And before we get into the more fun, whimsical episode we have for you later this month, we're going to start by talking about something that affects literally more than half of the human race, that has held a stigma forever, since the dawn of time. And there's a lot of misconception around this topic. And today we're going to dive into our experiences, what we know, all of the nitty-gritty about periods. So if you're somebody who's uncomfortable with listening to us talk about menstruation, this is your cue to leave. This is me opening the door for you to exit. But we really hope you'll stick around, whether you identify as male or female. I think that this is a super important topic to discuss openly and genuinely.
You know, when we say we talk about the real stuff in our intro, this is one of those episodes where we're really diving into the real stuff. Periods are something that, both of us experience, as do, I'm sure, a lot of you. And, everybody's experience is different. And I think because it isn't talked about as much, some people might go through things that they don't know if they're normal or not, or, maybe there could be undiscovered underlying things going on. And I think that's why we just want to talk about it, because there's this sense of solidarity when you can openly talk about these things and tend to them, because it is an aspect of your health. We kind of have this episode broken up into a few different sections, but I think we just wanted to straight up start with the stigma around periods and kind of, bust some myths about it and etc.
Yeah. And I think we want to kind of start by giving the disclaimer that we are not doctors. We are not
we're not health
specialists. We are not OBGYNs.
We are women.
We are women who experience this. And as I grew older, I kind of went down this road of becoming very passionate about educating myself about my own body, and also educating the women around me about theirs and advocating for them. And so whether you are a female who is experiencing this right along with us, or whether you are a male who has maybe a partner or a spouse or a best friend or a sister who is experiencing these things, I think knowledge and awareness are the best way to be an advocate. I think we're going to start by addressing the stigma. I don't know. I mean, we've come a long way, but I think we still have a long way to go. And Jess, I'm sure you agree. I just remember so often, especially when I was younger, feeling like I had to hide it, and I didn't want people to know I was on my period. And if I had to get up in class to go to the restroom to change a tampon or something, you hide it in your sleeve or in your pocket.
I was going to say the same
and
thing.
You are constantly asking your girlfriends, hey, can you check to make sure I haven't bled through or whatever? And I just remember feeling so much shame around it. Nobody can know this secret. But if I looked around those classrooms or those, social gatherings, there were, at least half of the people there at any given time were probably women. And at least half of those women were probably also on their period, feeling the same shame and like reclusivity that I was. And I just don't have time for it anymore.
I think it's a universal experience
Yeah,
that having
sadly.
that moment in class when you're sneaking away. And it's not saying that like even today I don't sometimes feel that creep up again, but
Mhm.
it's like, oh, I need to bring my bag to the bathroom so nobody will know, or I need to
Mhm.
shove the tampon up my sleeve so nobody will know.
Mhm.
And if I talk about it, people are going to think that I'm gross and or
Mm.
like saying too much or being too graphic or blah
Yeah.
blah. And it's like ridiculous because we all do that. Like
Yeah.
it's a normal bodily function. I think it's irritating in the fact that like it's even uncomfortable to talk about sometimes with, family members or friends, like
Mhm.
depending on their outlook and their perception. Like I hate that you can't talk about it openly, just
Yeah.
in general. Yeah, I think that just like breaking the stigma that it's gross, like it's super normal. But I think there's also a stigma around villainizing your period and like making it bad and making
Ooh.
it's a natural part of, your cycle as a woman. Like you have
Yeah.
a whole cycle every month. And like I think villainizing part of that kind of does a disservice to
Mhm.
honoring the entirety of the cycle and
Yeah.
the whole process in itself.
Yeah, I actually agree, and I would even like I would even go so far as to say that it is beautiful. Um
Mhm.
and I think that part of the reason there is shame and stigma and villainization is because it's blood, right? We're talking about blood. Some people have a phobia of blood, some people just think it's gross, you know, like seeing a paper cut or scraping your knee is one thing, but like imagining someone losing significant amounts of blood every month is like startling. As someone, for me, I was on hormonal birth control for many, many years and like a lot of my adult life. And I stopped having a period for several years. And some doctors told me that was normal. Some told me it wasn't. And I ultimately made the decision for myself to go off of it because I saw it affecting my life in negative ways. It was actually making me feel really like emotionally stunted. I felt like I wasn't as engaged. I felt like it was just suppressing a lot of the things that make me me. And literally, as soon as I went off of it, within 2 weeks, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. I felt lighter. I felt happier. I felt like giddier sometimes. I just felt like I was feeling all of the things that make me alive. And that included getting my period back. But when I first got my period back, and I think you'll remember this too, I was like, I'm normal. Like I was so excited because I was so like for so long, I was like, will I even get it? Like, has something gone wrong with me? Like, as much as most of us spend the other 3 weeks of the month dreading that week and like, getting apps and using calendars to try and figure out when it's coming so we can
Yep.
be prepared. I was just so excited. Like when it happened, I was like, oh, I didn't expect to get it back so quickly. They had told me like, oh, it might take you 6 months or a year. Sometimes it takes longer. I felt like a part of something again. I was like, I can be the friend who has a tampon for you again. Like, and now I just carry them in my bag. And if I'm going into like the parks or something and their security people are searching my bag and it's like a guy and he sees the tampon, I'm like, I feel that like initial shame, like spark in me. I'm like, oh, I should feel embarrassed that he saw that. And then I'm like, no,
I kind of like when they see it. I'm like, take a look, boys.
got a problem. But
Yeah.
I think if we see it that way as like this sort of thing that connects us as women, especially as we're moving more and more into a time and space of like supporting each other and lifting each other up, this is something we're all going through. And we might as well try to find a way to make it easier on each other.
I think that one missing link that you guys probably can relate to is I think that our education system around having periods is just lacking essentially. I think that when girls even get their first period, they don't even know how to insert a tampon. Like that's the extent of which we don't talk about it.
Mhm.
And the way that it's taught is, from what I can remember in my experience in school, was it was very scientific, but it wasn't very practical. And if you don't have somebody at home who's talking about that openly, like you just have to learn, and you have to learn from, well, now there's Google, which is good, but
Well,
maybe
sometimes.
sometimes Google can be scary. So I don't know, proceed with caution, but it's like finding that friend or finding that mentor to guide you through it. And, even talking about it sometimes, depending on, like your relationship with your mom or your sister, like the person that you go to, like it still might be an uncomfortable topic. So
Yeah.
I personally would love to see, it restructured in the education system. And I also think that we've talked about this in one of our previous episodes, but I think that this segregation of like talking about it, separate from boys and girls, I think it needs to be a conversation that both parties are educated on, and it isn't like giggled at. Like it's a thing that happens that we need to learn about.
I agree. I agree completely. And I think that part of the reason there is a separation is because at that age, the maturity level is just not there to be able to have conversations about these kinds of things without giggling. And, I kind of understand why it has existed this way, but I think that that's where like maybe, and I don't have kids. I have a younger sister, and I have a mom who was always very open and very like, especially with anything that was happening in my body, was like, what's going on? Like, let's talk about it. And I would be like, why is this happening though? And like, what does this mean? And she would have an answer. The education system where that lacks, I think like as a parent or as a sister or as a friend or like mentor, whatever, I think that's where you can step in and kind of fill in those gaps until our education system writes itself. But I agree that it should be a conversation that involves male and female. I really don't want to get mad. I just remember watching girls be bullied in school. I remember in middle school, like so distinctly, school where we wore uniforms. And so I had a plaid skirt. And one day I had my period, and it was really heavy, and I bled through my skirt. And when I stood up at the end of the class, I saw blood on my chair. I was just on the verge of tears the entire time. And then she like handed me a tampon, and she gave me her sweatshirt to tie around my waist while I walked out of the room to go to the bathroom. The thing that made me cry wasn't like, partially I was crying because I saw like the boys in our class like whispering and pointing at me and like sniggering and, like very obviously making fun of me, but like trying to look sort of discreet about it. What a contrast to have like that friend who silently just gave me what I needed, didn't ask questions, didn't make fun of me, just showed up and like was exactly what I needed her to be. And then the other people who I also like thought were my friends, it just infuriates me to think that happens still, or that has happened to maybe my little sister, or that might happen to my daughter someday. Like nobody, especially at that age, that humiliation, like clearly it stays with you because 14 years later, I'm talking about it. Created this like marginal divide between men and women, which is so silly. I shouldn't feel like I can't tell you what's going on. I shouldn't feel like I have to hide it just to protect what? Like, what am I actually protecting? Is it your ego? Is it your gag reflex? Like, I don't understand why this is something that I'm keeping from you, or that I feel like I have to hide.
Yeah, I think that's such a point. It's like I feel like we're the ones who have to like be more embarrassed about it or hide it or whatever. And for what? Like we're also the ones who are going through it and losing a lot of blood and like dealing with the symptoms and side effects. And then, but we don't want to inconvenience anyone and like make them see something gross. Cut it out. I hate that. Thank you, Kristen, because I know that was a vulnerable story, but like that I know is going to resonate with someone or make somebody feel less alone out there. Like I felt that in my core.
I wish at the time that I had just been able to just not let it bother me. But I think honestly, it would probably still bother me, even if it happened now. As stupid as that is, like the instinct is to feel ashamed. If I were somewhere and were wearing like white shorts and bled through, and if there was a woman that saw that happen to me, I don't think I'd feel ashamed. But if a man saw that happen to me, if he noticed, I think I would instinctively feel ashamed. And that is an unlearning process that is like going to take so long and so much work.
I mean, there's so
hard.
much like lineage there just
Yeah.
in the human race. Like
Yeah.
that is how we're conditioned to look at it. And I think the main thing that helps me, and it's not a perfect solution by any means, but I think it's like looking at it as what it actually is, like the facts of
Mhm.
the happenstance versus the feelings and the emotions and like the replies and the reactions
Yeah.
that come along with it. Like all the other stuff is noise and reactions that
Yeah.
are not really a contribution whatsoever.
And they're not yours. Like you
They're
don't have
not yours at all.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so
So,
true. I think as both men and women get older, you have a very clear opportunity to, as a woman, like accept it as a beautiful part of who you are. And as a man, like really check yourself and
yeah.
what about this is so gross to you? What about this is so shameful to you? Like what has brought you to that mindset? What has created that storyline in your head and how can you rewrite it?
Exactly. Like, where can you show compassion instead? And where can you hold space for someone who's
Yeah.
going through something that is really uncomfortable and you are never going to understand how it feels? You can hold space for someone. You don't have to feel the experience to be able to empathize and be kind to them. Like, costs you nothing.
Because this is not just something we're going through for now. Like this is literally a recurring thing that happens every month. Okay, so we're talking decades. Every month for decades, we're going through this. And I think it's just it's so like, as my friend Bonnie would say, it's so like the audacity of men to make our suffering their suffering, and not in like a solidarity kind of way, but in a way that like, oh, I'm suffering because you are. Oh, you're on your period. Well, that means you're going to be cranky. How many times have we heard like, are you on your period? Because maybe you're a little short tempered, or oh, are you on your period if you're really tired and sluggish one day? They just assume.
Yeah.
And maybe you are, or maybe it's the week leading up to your period. Most men don't even understand that there are different phases to what is actually a cycle, and that the menstruation part is just one small part of it. And that the other weeks are spent with your body literally preparing itself for that cycle and then recovering from that part of the cycle. So just the fact that they assume, and I'm not saying all men do this, absolutely not.
I want to speak to this too, because or in the days leading up to my period or during my period, I do get those symptoms. And it's like, because of all of that, like what you just spoke to, it's like, how do I adequately like express that this is what I'm going through without seeming like, oh, I'm a baby. Oh, I shouldn't feel this way. Oh, whatever. But it's like, no, I do feel fatigued and I feel really achy and I feel really like I just don't feel good at all. But it's like, then I feel like I'm complaining and I'm being too much, or like I'm being too emotional and I'm crying.
Yeah.
I'm literally crying for no reason. And it's like, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. And it's like, I know that nothing's wrong. But then I also feel like completely horrible and just confused because something's making me cry and it's not external. It's just like, I'm just very emotional. I almost catch myself not taking ownership of that because I don't want to be like having these symptoms and being annoying. But then it's like, I'm experiencing it. So like, why am I not able to just experience it? And like, I feel pulled, you know?
Yeah. And I think that that's so resonant because so many of us experience one or more symptoms, you know, leading up to our period. And we'll get into those specifically when we talk about the myths and debunking all the myths. But I think first you have to look externally, and kind of like I did when, you know, my friend showed up for me, and then those other people I thought were my friends did the exact opposite. Is you have to like look at the people who are holding space for you and the people that aren't, the people that are like accepting that this is just a moment in time. Like this is what you're experiencing right now. And it's valid because it's happening, because you are like, there's so much that's going on. That's not just my uterine lining is shedding, which for those of you who are unaware, that's why you bleed. There is a huge hormonal upheaval that happens every month. And that affects your nervous system. It affects your gut. It affects your mind. It affects your energy. It affects everything. These systems are all working together, which is part of what makes us whole, complete, functional human beings, but also part of what can make this experience feel so debilitating. Because the fact that you're crying for no reason does not mean you are emotionally unstable. It means there is something going on over which you have no control. So the people who, again, educate themselves and understand that that's why that's happening can hold space for you there and can, be patient with you in those moments and help you to feel not like a burden, not like you're too much, but like that this is just a part of it and that it's not something to overreact about. And I think maybe that's what we're doing, is overreacting about our symptoms and going, everyone's going to think I'm annoying, or, my boyfriend's going to think that I'm crazy or whatever. People who will show up for you and give you grace are the people who have taken the time to understand. And we can only do that by having these kinds of conversations, which is why I think this is such an important topic.
I think I've gotten to the point recently where I'm starting to notice when it is. I use that app Clue.
Me too. I think you got me onto that app, actually.
Yeah, no, it's great. But I think I've started to take note of, when my period is, and I give myself like 2 days off to just like lay in bed and just let it ride because those days are they're hard and they're emotional and they don't really feel that good. And I personally think I still have a bit of a hormonal imbalance from all of my health issues I've had over the past few years. And that's something I am looking into and trying to figure out. But on that journey, it's like, how can you treat yourself with kindness and grace during those days? Because they're not easy. I know like my health anxiety spirals during my period, and I always think something's really, really wrong with me. But it's like the period symptoms flaring. So yeah, like there's just so much you can do for yourself if you're able to like tune into it. I think that's what I've learned, and stopping trying to act like someone who isn't menstruating on days that you are.
Yeah.
Like, don't plan a job interview. Don't try to travel. Yes. I've made that mistake a few times in the past few months, and those days have been hell. Like, kind of maybe plan your life a little bit more around it instead of just trying to operate like someone who doesn't get a period every other day of the year. I think it's ridiculous that we're expected to just go to work and operate normally on days when we have our period, when like, why? Like, I just think that's so
because
horrible.
The patriarchy is real.
Because the patriarchy, but that's a whole other conversation.
It's a whole other conversation, and we're not going to get into it here. But yeah, I think that that's so true. Like, we're expected to do all of these things because, we have spent generations. Well, we've spent generations being shamed for having our periods and hiding it from the world because we are ashamed of having our periods. So of course we'd be expected to go to the job interview or compete in the Olympics or whatever when we have our period, because why not? Like, I don't understand why you can't. Doesn't that just happen to you every month? No.
She's getting heated.
I'm getting heated.
Actually, I think I might mention one quick little podcast plug here.
Oh, please do.
Amy Young is one of the people that I follow online, and she always posts really great, like self-discovery, like spiritual, really deep topics. And she really dives into a lot of stuff. And she, on her podcast called Just What You Needed, she had a guest, Vianney Lee, come on and talk about like basically working with your cycle. Like, Vianney is someone who, she's like a menstrual cycle coach type of person. So she breaks down those 4 parts of the cycle, like you were talking about, Kristen, and helping you kind of shift your lifestyle to work with your cycle versus just like whatever. So I want to link this episode for you guys because I'm not even doing it a justice right now talking about it, but I remember listening to that and being like, oh my God, you could actually use this to work in your favor because like, for example, like during your ovulation part of your cycle, you have so much more like creative energy, and like, you're just like, a lot more productive and XYZ. Like there's like all of this methodology behind it. And I was just blown away by it. So I think I just never thought to look at it that way. And I think as a woman who's in her adult life now, educating yourself in different ways than just the educational system is actually really beneficial.
I think that actually being an adult and having the space and freedom to educate yourself about whatever the heck you want is kind of like one of my favorite parts about being an adult.
Oh, it's
like
the best.
I get to choose what
That's
I learn.
why we
now.
have this podcast.
Yeah,
I think talk about all these things.
That's literally because we just love talking about all of these things. So no one's going to be surprised. I swear to God, like her ears must just be ringing all the time at this point. Liz Moody, who I have pimped out to everyone I know at this point. If you have not heard me talk about a Liz Moody podcast episode, I don't know that we've ever had a conversation.
When are we getting her on this pod?
Honestly, that's what we need to manifest for 2022. She had twice, actually, on 2 different episodes, which we will link below, a doctor for a series that she calls her Ask the Doctor series. And then they also did an episode together called the Hormone Q&A. And it's a lot of like rapid fires. She's an MD, a midwife, and an herbalist. Her name is Dr. Aviva Ram. She has several books. Her Instagram is Dr. Aviva Ram. She posts a lot of like graphics and, you know, just really helpful things, especially if you do kind of experience more acute symptoms or you're on birth control, you have PCOS or endometriosis, something like that. Different foods you can eat to help with period pain or cramps or just inflammation. And just a lot of things that have helped me a lot, especially as someone who was coming off of birth control and like navigating this space again, just learning different ways to support my body in a way I haven't really ever done, because when I was younger, I was just like, okay, I get my period, whatever. But now as an adult, as I'm like learning to adapt my lifestyle to the body that I have and the health concerns that I have or have had and the things I experience, I think this is a really great way. Again, we can like support our bodies during our periods and maybe even mitigate some of those symptoms that cause us to feel less than ourselves, not for everyone else's convenience, but just so that we can feel better. And maybe if we can't enjoy our period, we can at least be able to, you know, exist more comfortably during that time. So she just debunks a lot of the myths. And in those episodes, specifically the Q&A one, they get into like a lot of the nitty gritty, like Liz will be like this symptom and Dr. Ram will just like go through all of the reasons why it's happening to you and all the things that you can like actually pragmatically do to help yourself. So I think that that's a really awesome resource. I think that my number one myth I would love to debunk here is that period pain is normal. Like being in severe, debilitating amounts of pain, having cramps that make you curl into the fetal position and want to die, or being so fatigued that you cannot get out of bed. Those things are not normal. And I think that was shocking to me when I learned that, because I always just thought that they were. And it turns out that like having some discomfort, like some cramping, some inflammation, some fatigue is normal, because your uterus is a muscle. And if you're having like a heavier period and you're feeling more cramps, it's just because that muscle is having to work harder. So there's a lot of very, scientifically sound reasons why, but to be in so much pain that you can't function might be the sign that something else is going on. And I think, again, having awareness around that is huge, because I think we all kind of assumed, or maybe even were taught that it was normal, but we were never taught like how much was normal, as scary as it is to navigate those things. And as much as you should not Google your symptoms, having a doctor or a resource in place where you can say like, hey, every month when I'm on my period, I am in so much pain. I feel like I'm doubled over all day long. And I have to take, 6 ibuprofen just to get through my workday or something. That might be a sign that there's something going on that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. And I think to piggyback off that, I think that it's very, very, very important to make sure you're working with a doctor who supports you and understands you, because I've noticed that a lot of times, even going to certain gynecologists, or just certain doctors in general, they don't seem to even understand that myth themselves sometimes. And I think that educating yourself on your own and then also finding someone who matches that, is really, really important, because you don't want to feel like you're out there on your own trying to fight this battle, with someone who just really doesn't specialize in women's health, because it's just a area of the medical field that just has not been researched as thoroughly as it should be, since it affects so many of us. I would just say to just tune into that. I'm just thinking about, there's this TikTok about this girl does these comedy skits about, like, she did one about a gynecologist, and it's like, oh, like, what kind of birth control do you want? Oh, do you want to have like this symptom, this symptom, this symptom, this symptom, or these symptoms over here? And I'm like, that's so true. And it's scary. It's scary.
Yeah.
So again, always just find what works for you and find something that feels more authentic and like it feels lighter. Because I've noticed when it comes to doctors, because I've interacted with so many over the past few years, especially, if it feels heavy, like, double check, get a second opinion, do some research on their background. Yes. From a like patient perspective. That's my advice, I guess.
Yeah. Because you are your greatest health advocate and you know your body better than any doctor ever could. And they may have the expertise to back what you're going through, but they don't have that self-knowledge that you have. So I agree. I think it's always a good idea to get a second opinion, especially where diagnoses are concerned. And I think it's a good idea to do your own research, find reputable sources, find actual, like this woman, Dr. Aviva Ram, is a doctor. She is a licensed physician. She's also someone who has a lot of free resources out there, a website. And so you can do a lot of the advanced work there so that when you do actually go see a doctor, you don't just come in with, hey, I'm just having really bad cramps and I feel tired all the time. You can come in with actual, terminology and examples and references to certain symptoms and things. It's almost like studying for the exam. As always, before we wrap up the episode, if any of you feel like you want to share your story, if you have a question or just need an ally, like, please slide right into our DMs and we can talk about anything that you're going through, but especially this topic is so important to us both. So please know
all this together.
You're not alone. We will be your sisters and your advocates. So yes.
The last thing we're going to talk about is just what our own experience is like when we have our periods and what we do to support ourselves during it. And I think it's important for us to share this aspect because every woman experiences something different on their period. And the symptoms that you can have are so varying. Like if you look up symptoms, like the list it's so all over the place.
Yeah, it really is.
I've noticed, especially since I had my health issues in 2018-19, my periods have gotten significantly more challenging and more painful. They really didn't used to bother me that much when I was younger. So like in 2018-19, I was exposed to toxic mold. I don't know if there were other things that were part of that, that caused my like health downfall. We talked about that in our like personal health journey episode. We can even link that one for you. But ever since then, I think that my periods have gotten a lot heavier and have gotten a bit more painful, as far as inflammation and cramping goes. And especially those few days leading into my period, I have like very intense mood swings. I think that my health issues like have caused a little bit more irritability for me, like in general. Like my moods and anxiety are very fluctuating, which you probably can't tell from online. But yeah, I think those like 3, 4, even 5 days before my period, my moods and anxiety are like all over the place. So during my period, I guess the best ways to support myself are to be aware of when it is, so I can kind of regulate it a little bit for myself and know like, hey, like your period is coming up. So if you're fluctuating right now, just like get centered, know that it's not something external. It's like, it's hormonal and it's okay. And like, you can feel all of your emotions, but like, you don't need to like adjust anything externally. Like you just kind of
Right.
need to feel it and let it pass. And like during my actual period, I think a lot of my symptoms are very challenging. Like I get kind of lightheaded and like my inflammation and cramping are really bad. And like my joints are always popping and cracking and my knees feel really weak and stuff like that. So I do end up taking like the first day or two to just lay low and just not put any pressure on myself, work in bed, whatever, eat what I want, like try to pick nourishing foods, but just
Yeah.
make sure I'm eating like more than usual because I think I almost need to have more energy. Because you're like burning more energy, I think, when you're
There is
releasing
so
so
much actual
much.
science there, Jess. Yes.
Yeah, if I don't
So
eat a
true.
lot, I feel horrific. So I just made sure to eat a bit more than usual, which is good. And I've always struggled with having low iron, especially around my period. So I take extra iron.
Mhm.
I actually use, can link this in the show notes, but I use it's called Spa Tone liquid iron, and I put it in like a juice and drink it. So it kind of just goes, it's a little bit more direct versus a pill capsule because those kind of irritate my stomach sometimes. So that's helpful. And also, I've found magnesium to be helpful because it relaxes your muscles. So thankful that it comes pretty consistently because I know a
Yeah.
lot of people don't experience that. That is like the
Yeah.
one upside. We're looking at the silver lining here. Like we said, this whole episode, I think it is really, even though it's not the most pleasant thing, it makes me proud to be a woman in a sense. Like I feel connected to everyone that is a woman because we go through this together. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
it's
agree.
it's a lot, but it's okay.
I like that. It's a lot, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is. It is a lot, but it's okay, and you are not alone at all. Maybe
Yeah.
your individual experience might be unique, but overall, definitely not alone. I think those are some great supplemental tips as well. If you don't, work from home or in a setting where you have as much freedom to relax, while you're not feeling well, like finding other ways to support your body. I think like a great thing to do if you are someone who experiences those mood shifts would be meditation, 10, 15 minutes to just get grounded. And if you're someone who feels fatigued, I think that, waking up in the morning and maybe like taking 30 minutes to go outside and like take a walk, like get your blood circulating, get that oxygen to your brain, and like just slowly wake yourself up by being outside if you can, even if it's cold, like bundle up and just take a little walk or do a little yoga flow or something, like really like some low impact, just soothing things.
There are yoga sessions on YouTube for like when you have
Yeah.
your period
Yeah.
too. If you search that on YouTube, you can definitely find it. I'm sure Yoga with
Yeah.
Adrienne has one.
Yeah. I'm
And it
sure. I'm
helps. It
sure.
really
Yeah.
does.
Yeah. That's just so important to like keep your cortisol levels down. Our being on our period can make us feel disconnected from ourselves. We feel icky, we feel bloated, we feel like strangers in our own bodies in a way. And I think that whatever you can do to like get yourself back to sort of like center with you and feel like yourself, whether that's like doing something you love or just getting, grounded in your body, can be so helpful. But also those things like magnesium is huge. Adaptogens are huge, like reishi mushrooms, ashwagandha, things like that, whether you have it like in your coffee or I have like a powder I put in like smoothies and things that can be super helpful for inflammation and just to, calm everything in your body down. Drinking lots of water. There's a whole ton of foods you can eat that I won't get into, but basically, nourishing things you can have to support your body. Not a lot of sugar or caffeine or anything that's gonna spike your adrenal glands. But I think too, and Jess and I were talking about Liz Moody posting something too, like ways to make your period more enjoyable. Like I like to kind of use the first couple days when I feel my worst as a time to like just get cozy. And I know we love to use the word cozy, but we can feel so obligated to just go, go, go in life. And those are the 2 days of the month where I kind of feel like I'm being granted permission to like just not do anything. Like I get my favorite blankets down and I like binge watch a show that I want to watch. And I like actually take the time to like make myself like a really yummy smoothie or like hot chocolate or like something I can like hold and sip. And I like do all the little self-care things that like I'll put eucalyptus in my shower to make my shower feel like a warm spa. And like it actually then becomes a time that I sort of look forward to, because I know that like when that first day hits, I'm like, oh, I get to relax. Like I'm looking forward to it like it's a spa day or like it's like a chill, cozy, you know, those like rainy days where you don't go anywhere and you just like get to do all the cozy things. I've set aside that time, you know, and if I have a work day that if it happens to fall on a weekday, that's fine. I set aside the evening for those things.
I like that. That's
yeah. And it's become something like, I genuinely, I mean, not to say like I look forward to getting my period, but I genuinely look forward to those days every month.
I think tuning in and paying attention to it is the biggest thing that I've learned to do. Instead of, I think I just was never conscious of it or cared to really pay attention. But I think since I've started to pay attention, even just a little bit, it's helped me feel more connected to myself and feel like I can serve myself better, especially during those days where I do feel a little bit lower energy. Yeah. Why not make it an experience that is slightly better?
You don't want to spend your life dreading that week every month. So whatever you can do to like romanticize it, make it magical and beautiful and have that, yeah, like throw some main character pizzazz energy on that.
Yeah.
I mean,
seriously, I love that.
That's in your power. Like maybe you can't control when you get a period, how long it lasts, how much it sucks. But what you can control is like all the things that kind of surround it. It is a lot, but it's okay.
It is.
I love that.
Well, I think that was a really great conversation. We tapped into all of it. We tapped into the education, we tapped into the personal experience, we even tapped into ways that you can make your experience better. And that's what we like to do here on ReDIScover, is give you a full, well-rounded approach to any topic, but especially the topics that are important and resonant to us. So we hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Kristen, thank you for being such an advocate for making this episode happen. That was really Thank you. Yeah, that was a really good conversation and something we've never really dove into on here. And I am so, so glad that we did.
Yeah, me too. I hope that it resonates with you, no matter what your connection to this very specific personal experience is. And we hope that you'll share it too with your sister, with your partner, with your coworkers, your friends. And kind of invite them to be part of the conversation and to know that they're not alone. But stay tuned, because in 2 weeks, we've got a really fun episode that I actually can't wait to dive into this topic.
Yes, we're going to continue on our feminine empowerment journey of this month, but we're going to tie it to a topic that we all know and love. Do I say what it is?
I mean, there may be a little Disney magic involved.
There may be. So stay tuned. Yeah. Come on back for that. So thank you guys so much for listening today and talking about the real stuff with us. And we look forward to chatting with you once again in 2 weeks. That's all we have for today. So thanks for being here, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of ReDIScover.
If you haven't already subscribed, hit that button and join the ReDIScover fam.
If you're like us and you have opinions about everything, leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. Your positivity inspires our creativity, and we love hearing from you.
Join us every other Tuesday for brand new episodes full of rediscovery.
And each month has its own unique theme, so be sure to catch them all.
Follow us on Instagram at positively.kristen and at jessicafay508.
And check out Jess's blog at theroadjesstraveled with 1l.com.
Until next time,
bye!